Part 4, Duality.
So, we need to take a step back here and enter into a new continent. This is where duality takes place, somewhere else. Some things I need to explain first are the other types of magic systems going on. So, unique to each continent is a different type of magic. But there's another type of unrelated magic that's consistent throughout the world, throughout all 7 continents. I have dozens and dozens of pages of the lore on this world, but I'll condense it into a few seconds so no one falls asleep or steals my ideas. I'm watching you. In the beginning of the world, there were a number of special people who inherited these crazy powers. I won't say where they're from just yet or how many of them or anything like that, but suffice it to say, one of the important aspects of this crazy power is the ability to teleport from one continent to another. This is super important later. But aside from that, it just makes you stupid strong. It makes you OP. From now on, I'm gonna call this the
Ancient Power.
Okay, moving on. In Duality, we follow 2 main characters, not just one, hence the name. And also, this is technically part 1.5 in the storyline. Since this isn't the main story, it's more of like a spin-off, but you will see. We're going Kingdom Hearts here. I'm gonna be a rebel, and I'm gonna start with character number 2. His songs are the even ones on the album, 2, 4, 6, and 8. He's the king of a town, but he's how I'd lovingly describe it, he's a little bitch. He's one of those kings who cowers from every conflict, the kind of, that kind of thing. He inherited the throne as a wee lad, and he's never been a normal person, and so he has those kind of issues. So, beginning with song 2, Passing Storm. It kicks off with this character, we'll call him Brad, witnessing the collapse of his town. So in this world, it's pretty much overtaken by a zombie-type creature. So every point of civilization across the continent has a giant wall. And these zombie things have been around since the beginning of that continent, so no one knows any different. It's just like a normal thing over there. Cities rise and fall depending on how these zombie creature things act. If they hoard up, they can run over most anything. So that's happening to this guy's place right now. So instead of organizing his forces to try and keep the city alive or save civilians or all that stuff that a king would normally do, he escapes out the back of the palace, out of the town, and hides in a bush while he listens to the sounds of his people dying. His feelings of shame and sadness are basically the topic of that song. Song number 4 is Immortal, and here, Brad begins to go on a journey. Shortly after his city's destroyed, he's just kind of roaming the land in shame, not really knowing where he's going. He comes across a group of people who are researching the zombie things, trying to figure out what they are, how they exist, maybe how to destroy them, typical stuff. Brad joins up with them and aids in the research. That's what this song is about. Song 6, The Will of Change, begins with the discovery of how to actually destroy the zombie things. Yes, they learn how to do the thing. This is cool. This is important. They begin looking for the thing that the research describes as the power to dispel the wandering. Little do they know, that power is the
Ancient Power
I talked about earlier. Eventually, Brad has to go through a series of pretty rigorous trials to achieve this power, but he ends up completing them and gains a semblance of the
Ancient Power.
Song 8 is The Hero Within, Brad's change from a cowardly dude to this jacked bro with the power to save his continent. Shortly after he gains the
Ancient Power,
he hears that another town near him is being sacked by the zombie things. So he heads that way and he saves the town. It's this big climactic, heroic moment, and boom, Brad's individual story is finished. So on to character 1, who I will call Alice for now. She begins in the same town as Brad when it got destroyed, only she's just some random townsperson dude in the town where Brad is the king. Song 1 is New Beginnings, which also follows the destruction of that same town from before. This time it follows Alice as she bands together a bunch of the townspeople and gets them out of danger safely. It's one of those things where she had no idea that she had it in her, but instincts just randomly took over and now she's some leader or something. She's like the Rick Grimes,
What is that? What is that?
So song 3 is called The Undaunted, and it follows that same group of townspeople as they wander the land trying to find a new home. They come across a settlement that's also being destroyed and they help save it. And yes, stuff being destroyed happens often on this continent. It's why the population is so spread out, so small, no one is ever really safe. Their life expectancy is like 30 years or something. Anyway, so they save this little town and they garner the title of the Undaunted, this group of people who just wander around saving others. These people decide to embrace this calling, and they want to travel to the next place in peril and save it too. Song 5, Voices Unheard, takes place inside Alice's mind. Now here's where we're going. So see, throughout this entire journey so far, she's been feeling these weird, intrusive thoughts that just started as just that, but the urges, they're getting greater and greater, telling her to do weird or just bad things. Like, she'll hear a whisper and it just says,
Go kill that guy.
so she's been successfully ignoring the voice, but as it's been getting stronger and stronger in her mind, she begins to feel her sanity slipping as she can't tell what's real and not anymore. So in this song, I take the voice of the madness in her mind and mix singer as Alice trying to survive through it. So the ending of the song, where we go back and forth vocally, it's kind of the climax of this struggle as the voice really gets a foothold in her mind. And then lastly, song 7 is Faded Light. This follows the group of the Undaunted as they enter this gigantic town that's currently being destroyed. And they try to help, only this time they're actually losing and it legitimately looks like they're all gonna die. So Faded Light is basically their lament that they gonna die and that they weren't strong enough to help. So we end the individual stories, but if you haven't noticed, there's actually 3 more songs left. I know, it's crazy. So this is where their fated meeting takes place. So the town in Faded Light, where Alice gon' die, is the same town that Brad goes to save after attaining his
Ancient powers.
So the two characters begin and they end in the same place. Anyway, so Brad saves the town, but the two main characters still don't really know each other. The last 3 songs, Destiny Falls, The Ethereal, and The Enigma Rises, tell the story of what I'm about to describe. So pay attention because this shit gets kind of weird. So after some time passes and Alice and the Undaunted settle into this city, Alice completely loses herself to the voices in her head. She's no longer in control at all. So she travels to the town's palace where Brad is just hanging out and she approaches him. They have an epic fight as Alice's controlled mind wants to kill Brad for some reason we don't know yet. Eventually, after the struggle, Alice gravely wounds Brad, but as he's bleeding out on the floor, the voice, or at least what we think is the voice, jumps from Alice's body to Brad's dying one. The wound instantly heals and Brad gets up, only it isn't Brad anymore. Dramatic pause. Brad, now possessed by the entity, gravely wounds Alice in turn, then straight up disappears, and the album ends with Alice dying. Sad. So you might be asking yourself, Twan, why is the last song called Enigma Rises? Well, I'll tell you. So see, the voice in Alice's head, not madness. That was the Enigma's influence on her, his attempt to regain a physical body. So after he was killed by Jeff by being stabbed in the throat, his spirit was transported to another continent and he was just kind of floating around. Eventually, he found a few bodies suitable for possession and began to influence their journeys so that they would meet in the end. The Enigma takes over Alice, then wounds Brad enough that he's weak, then possesses Brad, who still has the
Ancient powers.
He then uses the
Ancient powers
to teleport back to his continent, being summoned by the cultists back in Melodia. But Alice is still dead. Or is she?